Right, good morning, all. I'm just waiting for everyone, but I think we're live. We're streaming live as well, so on Facebook. So at the moment,
Him no answer. And now Stasha. She want to bring it up with you. She might say no.
Good morning, everyone.
good morning. We're just waiting on my colleagues, and we'll start.
I'm here. Good morning.
Good morning. We're just waiting on Rafael is now joining, and Joey to pronounce.
David Kemraj is joining us in a minute. He's coming on now.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us this morning for this Alliance for Change press conference. My name is David Patterson. I'm the General Secretary, and I will be the host for this press conference, virtual press conference. I do hope we're all safe. Just some housekeeping matters. We're streaming live on Facebook, so I'd hope persons, while you're not speaking, if you can mute your mics. Joining us today is the leader of the Alliance for Change, Kamraj Ramchatan, the chairman, Raphael Trotman, vice chairperson, Cathy Hughes, and chairman of our Youth for Change and MP designate, Jarita Fernandez. And they all, and the process is we all will make brief statements on matters, and then we will invite you to ask questions on our presentation or any other particular issue that you raise. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Alliance for Change, I would like to thank all the persons, all Guyanese that would have voted for the coalition government in the March 2nd, 2020 general and regional elections, as well as all the persons who continued to provide us with support during the lengthy recount process to ensure that their votes were properly recorded and counted. We now move to another stage, equally important, the election petition, which you will hear about shortly, and parliamentary opposition until the successful determination of the petition. And we do anticipate a successful determination of this petition and shortly thereafter another general election. Due to the current pandemic, we will be unable to visit your communities to express our heartfelt thanks to you in person. However, we will use every means necessary, including social media, to communicate our messages to you. We'd like to thank you for your support and guidance and comments, and we trust that you and your family are safe during this pandemic period. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I would now ask our leader, Kamraj Ramchatan, to give you the way forward for the Alliance for Change. Kamraj?
Thank you very much, David, and a very good morning to all the reporters and members of the press present. Thanks for being here this morning. The Alliance for Change, in this first press conference prior to the reconvening of Parliament on Monday, expresses with a mixture of sadness and gladness that we are here where we are. The hard-fought campaign of 2020, the trials and tribulations experienced post-elections, and the final declarations after much political contestation and judicial litigation readies us as a party to learn and unlearn as we move forward. These lessons will forge a more united AFC, steeling it for the struggle for enhanced electoral and constitutional reforms, governance with increased integrity in all spheres of public activity, the condemnation of all acts of executive lawlessness by the PPP government, and the ensuring that Guyana's patrimony is enjoyed equally by all. The AFC sees a huge task ahead at the local, regional, central, and international level. Its leadership, along with its partnership with APNO, will see these tasks confronted successfully, notwithstanding COVID-19. In getting ready to do that and lots more, we have to continue doing as we have done during the time of our existence to date, exercise and elaborate on our liberal democratic method. Our base, comprising of our membership and supportership in all the regions, must be informed of all decisions taken by our executive and must scrutinize them as thoroughly as is possible. Their suggestions must always be treated with respect and given the highest consideration. The structures on the ground, namely members, groups, and regions, must soonest come out of the disappointment of a loss of an election and put out the works that will get us back in to continue the progress we started with our partner, APNU. Our youth and women's sections will have to be rejuvenated and speak boldly and freely on national issues. With 9 members of parliaments, 16 regional councillors, and a couple of vice chairs, the AFC continues to make a name for itself across the political landscape of Guyana. Its ever-broadening support will see even further gains nationally. Don't stop the progress. Thank you very much. That's my short statement.
Thank you very much, Comrade. And I'd ask you to hold your question. We will now ask Vice Chairperson Catherine Hughes to give a statement on Parliament.
Thank you and good morning, everyone. The AFC supports efforts to convene Parliament virtually, given the COVID-19 pandemic. The Alliance for Change appreciates the significant efforts being made by the Clerk of the National Assembly to convene Parliament virtually as outlined in his recent statement. The AFC viewed with great alarm and raised its concerns regarding the proposed convening of the 12th Parliament of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana at the Arthur Chung Conference Center. In a time of a global pandemic and the rapid increase in the number of cases of COVID-19 that have plagued Guyana over the last 2 weeks, the AFC was disturbed that arrangements were not being put in place for Parliament to meet virtually. We recall that several guests, including ministers attending the recent inauguration ceremony, were found to have contracted COVID-19. The AFC remained unconvinced that the safety and good health of the citizenry could be guaranteed given the large number of persons who are required to attend a sitting of Parliament. Generally, this includes the 65 members of Parliament, parliamentary staff, support staff, including drivers, invited guests, including the diplomatic corps, media, caterers, cleaners, security, and much more. This makes safe distancing virtually impossible. The AFC recognizes that this is an unnecessary risk, given that the APNU AFC coalition government left in each ministry at several regional offices and statutory agencies across Guyana sophisticated video conferencing facilities that operate on a secure e-government platform and increased internet access across many parts of Guyana. The Alliance for Change looks forward to meeting virtually and hopes that serious considerations will be given to re-examining the constitutional issues and rules of procedure that require the presence of members and meetings in a specific location. Today, several parliaments worldwide are meeting virtually. These include Argentina, Brazil, Cuba, Denmark, Estonia, France, Greece, Iceland, Indonesia, New Zealand, the UK, the US, and Venezuela, to name a few. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cathy. And as you know, we filed the election petition. While I don't think we'll go into the details, Rafael, you don't want to just confirm that everything is going according to our...
Good morning. Welcome everyone to this, our first press conference. Yesterday, I am advised the application for leave to file the petition was made. And for persons who are not lawyers and therefore not familiar, the practice has been, even though it is not stated anywhere in writing, but certainly the practice has been that before a petition is filed, one has to first apply for the court's permission or leave. That is normally granted. I've never known of a situation or a case where it has been refused. And so the expectation is that that application will be considered and approved speedily by the court. The Alliance of Change continues to work with the APNU, its coalition partner, to ensure that the petition or petitions filed, because I'm told and do believe that we'll have two petitions because there's been great interest both here in Guyana and overseas in ensuring that we have credible petitions going forward. So we expect that the leave will be speedily granted. We expect as well that the courts will not in any way get themselves caught up with frustrating the speedy hearing of these petitions. And we have every reason to believe, on the other hand, that the petitions and their hearings and the trials will be enabled by the courts to be heard speedily and will go day by day as is expected by the law. This is a tedious and very meticulous process. I was involved and I know that's rushed because one error could make everything fatal and there's no second chance. We know that a petition has to be filed within 28 days of the official declaration of results. Those results were only officially declared last Friday. And so we're well within the time, even though there's some confusion. We have a lot of legal and constitutional pundits. And I'm happy to say that the citizenry is very in tune and aware of what the law says and it doesn't say. And so we look to them as well for guidance and to ensure that there's no mischief afoot. So the process is unfolding. We expect that it will be dealt with and that the formal proceedings will proceed on Monday, and thereafter the High Court will set a very, very early date because this is a matter of national, regional, and international import, and the speedier we have this resolved, the better. So I'd like to thank everyone and the media and our supporters as you did, GS, for their support, their interest, and I have to say, even for the criticisms, I think as a party we have to be able to listen to all views, those which are supportive, those which are helpful, those which are useful, and those which are also critical of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Raphael. I'd like to ask Jarita to make a brief statement. Jarita Fernandez, Chairman of the Youth for Change.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us, everybody, and for giving us this opportunity to speak with you. Well, today is my first engagement as a representative that will be in the National Assembly. And as a young Guyanese woman who comes from Region 7, I think it's important for me to just give a background of who I am, what got me to here. I know that I'm a least familiar face as compared to my colleagues here today. Coming from the mining town of Bartica, what I can say is that I know firsthand what are the challenges for young people in hinterland communities, because I have faced those struggles myself. I have faced struggles of getting education as a student, and I have struggled along with my students when I was a teacher. I can say that under the Granger-led administration, I have seen firsthand the impact of programs such as 5B's program and how simply providing a boat for students to get to school made all the difference in the lives of one student and provided that student with an opportunity to better their lives and to give further hope and belief to their family circle that their lives can be better as well. So these are the simple things that has driven me to do more and for me to want to make sure that more is done to better the lives of young people throughout Guyana, not just in the coastal regions, but in all 10 administrative regions. I say my passion for youth representation is nothing new. As I started along this course at the university level when I was pursuing my first degree in economics back then, I was always passionate about bringing life to the innovativeness of young people in Guyana, and I believe the 12th Parliament have given me an opportunity to do just that. I believe that equity and equality is paramount when developing all youth programs so as to ensure that no one is disenfranchised. With that, I can add immediately that it is quite worrying that the National School of Music was told to pack up and get out. Based on my knowledge, there was no forewarning, no consultation, nothing of the sort. These are things that will be heavily monitored. And these are things that I know that all the young representatives in Parliament will be looking at. I believe that one of the most important things right now moving forward into the 12th Parliament is to ensure that the enforcement of the National Youth Policy is guaranteed. This is a policy that was passed by the APNU AFC government, and it was the first, to the best of my knowledge, it was the first policy that was passed by any sitting government regarding youth. These are some of the things that I believe advocacy is absolutely necessary for, and I look forward to representing not only young people, but persons coming from the hinterland, because that is my background as well. And I definitely look forward to giving everything possible to these cause. So that's about it from me.
Thank you very much, Jarita. We will open up for questions, but I'd ask you to observe the usual protocol. One, keep the question short. State your name and the organization which you are representing, as well as please keep the questions short and focused. Otherwise, I would have to exercise the host's prerogative of muting you if you're not sure. So the floor, ladies and gentlemen, is open of the media for any questions to anyone here. Can you identify yourself and ask? Thank you. Miss King or Miss King? Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
King.
Yes.
Good morning, everyone. Kimal King from Kaitor News. I just have 3 questions, so I'll just ask them really quickly. Kathy Hughes, hi there. How well would you say the AFC's suggestions about the holding of Parliament have been received so far? And will the AFC refuse to go to Parliament if it's not held virtually? That's my first question. To Mr. Trotman, you had said that there will be 2 petitions filed. Could you explain why 2? And for Mr. Ramjatan, recently there have been comments by some of the small parties in the APNU coalition. JFAP, for example, has said that it is reviewing its membership in the coalition. And the WPA has taken the decision to leave the APNU coalition. I'm asking you whether the AFC is concerned about the issues raised about non-consultation on the APNU and what it means for the longevity of the wider APNU AFC moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. King. I'd ask Kathy to go first. Since the first
Sure,
one.
thank you for that question, Kamal. I would say that we are very satisfied that a process of examining what it will take to implement a virtual parliament is very seriously being considered. You would know that yesterday there was a statement made by the clerk of the National Assembly. And so we have taken encouragement, as I said, from that. We are part of a coalition, and therefore we have not made a decision that if Parliament is not, is only constituted in person, that we would not attend. I'd like to say that we recognize that the COVID numbers went from just a little over 400 2 weeks ago to well over 1,000. And therefore there's a very strong risk of the safety. And so I'm happy that it's being examined. I am willing, and we are willing to work with, with the Parliament and anyone that wants to put it in place. And we have not made a decision that says if it's not virtually, we will not attend.
Thank you, Kathy. Raphael, the question on
Thank you. If I can crave your indulgence, just to say something about the virtual parliament as well. I believe that Kathy set out that this is now the practice in many countries, and it's certainly going to be with us for a long time. And I think we all have to consider, the parliament itself or the parliament office facilitating virtual meetings, not just of the full parliament, but of committee meetings, ensuring that each MP gets a state-of-the-art laptop and that each MP has access to an internet connection, so that at any time or at a moment's notice, he or she could be reached, or he or she could participate in a meeting without being physically present. And so in the middle of this crisis, I believe, comes the opportunity for Guyana to leapfrog its way into the 21st century. And I'd like to commend Mrs. Hughes, former minister, for the foundation that she laid in ensuring that ITC hubs and the connectivity is now almost nationwide. And so it is not unforeseeable for the Parliament Office to ensure connectivity for every member of Parliament, whether they be in Region 1, 9, 7, 8, 10, or even in Prashad Nagar, without having to physically turn up at a committee meeting or for a sitting of Parliament. So I anticipate a changing of the standing orders relatively soon. And as I said before, the foundation has been laid by former Minister Hughes. And I would expect that good sense would prevail and we would stand on that foundation rather than try to break it down. To the specific question about why 2 petitions, it's not the first time that multiple petitions have been filed following an election, and with good reason. Should one fail, there's another to stand up. Because as I said, the law with respect to petitions is very strict. Compliance is very strict. And so if there's a failing, and many petitions, in fact, have failed. I believe there's only been one successful petition in the history of Guyana. That was the 1997 Esther Pereira petition. In fact, 1998 it was filed. All the others have failed. And so with good reason, it is important to have multiple petitions. So if there's a defect in one, that defect hopefully would not be found in the other. So there's no mystery or mischief. It is just something that is done in practice and with good reason. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Kamraj, can I ask you, Mr. King asked a question on the AFC membership in the coalition, if you have any concerns with the comments by the other parties within APNU?
Well, I really cannot speak for the APNU, and these 2 parties, JFAP and WPA, did publicly make some statements in connection with their further collaboration with APNU. But as far as I am aware, there is going on a set of talks with these 2 parties, with the major leaders of the APNU, and I think it will soon be resolved. It is true that the longevity of coalitions depends at the very heart as to how cohesive that the various components of that coalition can remain. And it is a good thing that at least we are going to engage, and at least the APNU is engaging their 2 partners. I do not see the problems being that egregious, going to fundamental principles and core issues that it cannot be resolved. And I believe that APNU is going to survive at this time, in this context of at least 2 of its members asking some very serious questions which must be answered. I want to tell you too this, that even in unitary parties like the AFC, or when I was member of the PPP, you would have very powerful individuals having problems with the party. And of course, the party leadership will have to come and talk to the members. If it really can't work, well, then you can have expulsions like happened to me, or a disassociation, as has happened to some members of the Civic when they were in the PPPC. So it is important that we await what the outcomes will be in relation to these talks and engagements of these two members of APNU with the leaders of APNU.
Thank you very much, Kamraj. I thought Ms. Lisa Hamilton, you want to say something? You had your hand up. If not,
Derek Basdale would like to say something, please.
Sorry, Derek. This is a question. This is a press conference. Ms. Hamilton.
Yes, a few of the questions that I wanted to ask were asked already, so I'll ask two others. Mr. Trotman, Mr. Patterson, and Mr. Rampitan, along with Ms. Hughes, you're all former ministers of government.
Which news house is this?
Guyana Chronicle, sorry.
Yes.
Yeah.
You are all former ministers of government. How do you respond to the criticisms of mismanagement that have come to your various former ministries from the current administration, such as financial mismanagement, project delays, etc.? And my second question, how does the AFC justify its call for Parliament to be held virtually, while there has been an encouragement from its coalition partner, the APNU-AFC, for supporters to mobilize at the Supreme Court for the petition, the filing of the petition?
Thank you very much, Ms.
Okay.
Well, I'll take the liberty to start, if you don't mind, colleagues, because I'm talking on the very first one. The allegations of mismanagement, financial priorities, and project delays, and those things like that. I have heard them. I mean, I have heard the accusation, and they're all baseless. And from I could speak from the Ministry of Public Infrastructure, which is formerly Ministry of Public Infrastructure. Well, I haven't heard anything about issues of financial impropriety. I've heard about project delays. Folks, one of the things you have to remember is that there is no budget for 2020. The last budget for capital works in 2020 was in December. It's December 2019. This is a 2019 budget. So several of the issues that they raised about project delays is and has very little to do with us as constituent ministers, but rather the status we're in. I've heard the ministers of public infrastructure speak about, let's take for example, the hinterland electricity corporations in Region 1 and in the outlying regions, how the engines need repairs. Every engine, we have been maintaining those engines annually from 2015 onwards. So every budget, you could look at every budget, which are normally passed in December the year before, there would be allocations for maintaining of the engines. Obviously, there's no allocation for 2020 because there's no budget. So for the ministers to jump up and say, oh, that there's no maintenance in 2020, it's obvious. It's quite obvious there's no budget in 2020, so therefore you cannot maintain it. But even so, even without a budget, there was a problem in Port Kaituma, now Matthews Ridge only, and that has been resolved. All the other hinterland electricity areas are serviced well. They're operational. They're having 24 hours. Mabaruma has 17 hours electricity the first time. Mabaruma, you have Port Kaituma, they have new generators in Port Kaituma. It was delivered there in December this year. Kokwani has a new generator delivered about 3 or 4 months ago. So several of the issues that I would have heard the ministers raise are purely related to the status we're in budgetary wise. And somebody should simply ask them, well, what is? And then you also have to remember public works was closed in March by orders, whereby, I mean, when the COVID started, the very first set of measures, one of the things that we did is that when there was an initial curfew, all public works were closed. And it was only reopened in July 2020, which is last month. So the ministers can get up and obviously just some bites. Some of them I don't even think understand what they've seen and what they know, but they just would like to talk about it. I mean, the question of GPL, everyone knew that since last year we went to buy generators for GPL, and that's ongoing, and they should be here. But obviously, the entire country suffered from the issues of the COVID pandemic. So therefore, obviously, everything is delayed. For the ministers to come and say there was no plan, that's not quite true. But I could address that formally. I don't want to go into too much detail in all the allegations. They was that, like one Stelling, obviously it thought that was stopped in March. So therefore, obviously the contractor did not re-engage. It's only in phase 3 of under the then Ministry of Public Health orders that capital works recommence. So there must be project delays. There's no budget, and there's the pandemic. But obviously, it sounds really good for these persons to make these allegations. I don't know if anyone else wants to add.
Yes, I just want to add that these things will always ring hollow when the two circumstances of no budget and COVID, and also the politics of the PPP is always to make political mileage. I understand from my ministry now, they haven't found any kind of financial impropriety or anything of the sort, but you would have, as I'm hearing that, the correspondences that were going to the police force ought to have a margin that should be 1 inch. These are marginal things but they want to make what you call politics out of it. And it is going to get the administration nowhere. And I think reporters too must be far more specific as to what it is that they would like former ministers to answer to, rather than general allegations of just delays and this and that. Otherwise, you will be giving plausibility to certain nonsense. And so I think it would ring hollow all across.
If I can add, yes, a very pertinent question indeed. To add to what the GS and leader just said, we are unfortunately guilty of all guilty of practicing adversarial politics, which means that whether we like to or not, we got to find something to criticize, because that's the nature of it. So as soon as you go in, if it's not, the margin is not 2 inches, it's 1 inch. If it's not this happened, it's delayed, a project is delayed by 2 months. Something has to be said that sets you apart, because that's the nature of our adversarial politics. In my instance, I believe some criticisms were leveled at the Forestry Commission. It was well known that the Forestry Commission was struggling for money. That was public. There were letters in the papers. There were responses from the ministry. I'm happy that the Ministry of Finance was able to hand over $350 million. And I challenge anyone to rebut, but that was monies that we were negotiating with Ms. Sonia Rupnath, budget director, to come over the tranche before the government changed. So there was no miracle there. And so I trust that the new minister will do his best. Bearing in mind as well that just before the last government change in 2015, the forestry was made to hand over $600 million to build the monstrosity, which is now White Elephant, at the old GBC building. And one would ask, why forestry's money? $600 million was taken from forestry's coffers to build a building that cannot be occupied because it is structurally unsafe and unsound. But we didn't start off by going out there attacking that 600 million. So when it is that we were called on to remove certain foreign Asian companies from the forest, we of course lost income from that. We lost income from the fact that the 600 million went. And of course, there was COVID. And so while none of these things, COVID was not anticipated, we found ourselves at the beginning of the year in some financial difficulty. We did not hide it. And we'd like to thank the board that did its best, and the union, which represented the workers, for understanding. So we smile when we see these things, and we are disappointed but not surprised at them. Thank you.
Kathy, you want to add anything to that, or read?
Yes, thank you, David. I'm laughing to myself because when they talk about delays, I can't help but think of the fact that both the contract for the Chedijagan Airport and also the East Coast Road that were signed, I think, sometime around 2011. And if we are honest as a people, we will know that we only began to get a vision of what this new airport would be in about 2016 or 2017. Similarly, for years, the East Coast Road corridor just languished. And that was in the PPP's time. So what to me, it is a sad indication of the immaturity of our politics. And I agree with my colleague Raphael. We are all guilty of it to different extents, but I think the time has come where we have to be more mature. You know, the fact that you come in and regardless of whether it is good, whether it is of benefit to the people of Guyana, that on principle, you are going to destroy it or stop the project. I've been horrified because I arrived in my position in 2015 and I was handed two drivers that I developed a wonderful relationship with. They were there when I came on. Those two individuals were let off just because they were working with Kathy Hughes. There are several cases recently where persons, ministers, I know the Minister of Sport is one that did this, went into a ministry, his ministry, and said, give me a list of everybody that came after the previous minister was there. And the assumption is that anybody that happened to be hired after the previous government took control automatically must be fired on principle. And this is where I worry as an individual that we are creating unnecessary conflict and strife. And we know that there are enough examples in the world. Look at Syria, look at so many other places. Nobody wins when we get into ethnic violence and civil unrest. And therefore, I am disappointed at the actions that we have seen. I know that in my particular ministries, I've not heard of any complaints, but given what I've seen, I won't be surprised. Something's going to come up. But I stand extremely proud. I know that the equipment for the expansion of the 200 ICT hubs has been sitting on the wharf since March. And I was happy to see the new Prime Minister mention that those hubs are going to be put in place. Once we've built something new and of benefit, we must continue to ensure that it works. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then on the matter of the mobilization, I've been informed that everything will be done. I know that there's been a donation of masks and those things like that, and persons will be advised about social distancing for the petition. I am advised that adequate precautions are being taken. I can't say so much more because I'm not the person involved with the planning, but I am being advised that everyone will be adequately prepared and tested.
And if I may add a distinction, GS, it is that we know for sure that at least two ministers have contracted COVID, and we pray for their recovery. So we're being brought into a situation where we know COVID exists, as against one where it could happen. And that's a grave distinction between why we're raising concerns about Parliament and why there's mobilization being called for the petition. So we've had no report about the two ministers, but we trust that they are doing well and receiving the best care possible. Thank you.
David, if I could add to that too, I think a distinction also can be made to the fact that we are in an enclosed area, close to each other for several hours. We don't have an agenda yet for Parliament, at least I have not seen one, But the reality is that you sit.
The air conditioning, yes.
Sorry?
He's in the air conditioning, Kathy. Continue.
Oh, okay. Yes, absolutely. The air conditioning, thank you, Raphael. And certainly being closed up in an environment. And we go sometimes from 2 in the afternoon right through to 10 in the evening, budget time. We've gone from 2 in the afternoon to 2 in the morning, the next morning. The media knows that because they stand with us all those hours. So I think there are some vast differences that impact on the safety of our MPs sitting in an enclosed area for that length of time, as opposed half an hour or however long.
Miss Day, you have the floor, and then Miss Parsival from Starbucks News. Miss Day.
Hi, everyone. Hi. Good morning, everyone. For you, Mr. Patterson, Miss Hughes, Mr. Ramjadan, and Mr. Trotman, my name is Shakima Day from Kaiser News, and I have 3 questions. My questions are, what is the evidence being presented in the elections petition? And can you say who in the party has seen the SOPs? And can they confirm that what was presented by Mr. Claremont Mingo, that his numbers were accurate? Pardon me?
Sorry, is that your questions? Ms. Day?
I have one more. Claremont Mingo and 3 of his assistants were arrested. Would the party care to comment on that? Those are my 3 questions.
Right. First and foremost, I think Rafa can answer, but there is something I think that you are, that a lot of persons seem to be misunderstanding, that the declarations were not made on any SOPs they were made on the statements of recount. So, I mean, the question and the order put the SOPs in abeyance. So I don't know why you're still referring to the SOPs. The numbers were I mean, based on the statements of recount. So therefore, obviously, those are what are the issues. Rafa could clarify that that is what is being done.
I'll only speak to the question about the evidence. For the petition, I think we should all await that. But I think generally, the world saw the glaring discrepancies and errors which came out during the recount process. So I'm sure you're going to see many of those being repeated, not in documentary form, but missing poll books and dead persons voting, migrated persons voting, etc. would obviously loom large. Then there are obviously legal issues about the recount order. I think it was Order 60 of 2020's legality, whether or not it was even abided by the commission, etc. So these are all going to be matters that will form part of the petition, but I would invite you and urge you to await the filing of the petition and the evidence that is to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Raphael. Kemraj, I don't know, or anybody.
Yeah, look, I want to tell Shakima that the recount process was what overtook, as far as I am aware, as a matter of law and GCOM's decision making, the Mingo's declarations. And we are dealing with a petition that is dealing with what illegalities and irregularities were found in the recount. The evidence then will be largely that from the CEO and all the summaries from the various officers that were there that saw all those things. In relation to the 3 arrested and Mingo's arrest and all of that, the police, of course, can conduct their investigation. Once, of course, I understand the GCOM chairperson would have called for certain investigations. What we are seeing, however, because there is matter in manner, you do not just go and treat these suspects like the way that I see the press is informing us about, and also lawyer Darren Wade. You know, chaining up the man, locking him up, not wanting lawyers to represent him. That is not what over the last 5 years was done to the police force to professionalize it. You had to indicate to the police that they must have a statement on the wall that the rights of the accused are there. They must have their lawyers present if they would wish when the interviews are being done. So it is important that investigation can go on, but the manner in which it is going on is highly unprofessional, and they're not even granting bail to some of these members for long amounts of time. What do they want? They want to crack them up in there for purposes of getting confession statements. Those are not going to be reliable evidence or admissible evidence in a court of law. And there can be questioning in a very professional way, even at the house or the offices of where these people work. And that is what is really, really bothersome and troubling at this point in time. Investigations in all manner of matters can be done. But please, I urge, on every officer conference for the last 4 or 5 years, I have been pleading with them, do not bully suspects. Do your jobs professionally in accordance with the judge's rules. And you know, there are gradients of offenses. There will be some very serious ones like murder and rape and terrorism and all of that. You can treat with more seriousness. But gosh, you got a 69-year-old man there. And the bench not allowing his lawyers to speak to him, and then trying as best as possible to make, you know, rebuttals as to what the lawyers have said. I mean, come on. The police force must be lots more professional and ethical in the way it conducts its investigations in these electoral matters.
Thank you,
Mr. Patterson? Sorry, I have...
Yes?
Sorry, Mr. Patterson, I have 2 follow-up questions, if I can.
Can you know, but you can come back. We have Percival, then news source. Obviously, long as you have time, you'll have an opportunity to.
All right, no problem.
I have 1 or 2 questions, please, to Shabral Damara Waves.
And you'll be off the news source. Ms. Percival from Sabbath News.
Hi, good day. My questions are rather brief. 1, could you give us an idea as to whom will be filing the elections petition? And 2, could we have a response from the party on the decision to send Mr. Vincent Adams on leave?
Right. Thank you very much. Raphael, on the question of...
I know that there are several, as I said, there's great interest both locally and internationally. And I'm aware that many persons have asked to be petitioners. And I believe the lawyers will decide and determine who will eventually go forward. I don't have the names with me right now, but I'm aware that, as I said, large numbers of persons have come forward asking if they can be made petitioners or asking for advice as to how they can themselves file a petition. As I said, it's a tedious process, and it's not simply filing a document. It's a lot of work. So the lawyers will eventually work out the who to ensure that if the persons are here, of course, are not living abroad, they'll be available for court, etc. So I'm unable to name them. But
would you then be able to tell us who the lawyers are?
I think that will come out there. Again, there are quite a number of lawyers who have volunteered their services, both in and out of Guyana. Certainly myself, Mr. Ramjatan, Mr. Ford, I believe Ms. Chandan, all of the MPs who are lawyers will necessarily want in some way to be associated with this. But we've received requests and offers from in and out of Guyana, as far away as London, in the Caribbean, and of course here in Guyana. It's just a matter of days, and all of that will be revealed. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Look, in relation to the matter of sending Vince Adams, Dr. Vince Adams, that is something that ought to be condemned most vehemently by reporters, by politicians, by the civilian authorities that talk on environmental issues. It is a most egregious development, especially in the midst of negotiation connection with the Payara contract and final decision for investment. We are all aware from the reports that we have seen over the past 6-7 months that Exxon continues its flaring. Now, flaring was not supposed to be done. They were supposed to have on the FPSO a certain piece of equipment that is going to, or they're going to inject back into the well that amount of natural gas. But we have wasted so much, and it has created pollution, because everything burning up there is pollution. And the other aspect of it that I know is of concern is whether the well water that is supposed to be locked into the well after it is used to bring up the oil will now be put out into the ocean. That is another pollution into the ocean. Flare and the water. I am not very impressed with Exxon. I was very happy that when we had the launch of their first oil and all of that. But in view of the fact that we know of better methods today that can take care of these environmental issues, and of course they're going to cost some more monies, those costs should be expended to ensure that the environment is not badly affected or severely affected, as it will. And even if they try to bluff us by saying that they're going to take their monies and go somewhere else, I want us to hold out that the best of the environmental standards must be set. Now, Vince Adams, when he was appointed, there was not any political appointment. Vince won based on all the marking system and score point system, based on his academic degrees and his practical working knowledge in the environmental unit of the Obama administration. And he comes with tremendous experience and expertise, and he's the only one that we feel that could deal with Exxon at this stage. However, we are troubled by the government also taking on an Alison Redford from Canada in relation to leading this team for the negotiation of the Payara and the review of the review and all of that, because she has tremendous ethical issues. And she was taken to lead a team. And now the one man that can stand the ground to be the guardian of our environment, the one batsman that could stand in that crease, is now being called out to go back to the pavilion. I find it very troubling, and I believe that the best environmental requirements are not now going to be met, because pressure will come from Exxon to this government, and this government's will is going to be sapped. That is why they took on that lady to begin with, Alison Redford, and now they have sent home Mr. Vince Adams. This is a grave, grave day for the environment and all the issues surrounding oil and gas. We as a people of Guyana must condemn this and take political action against what is happening here. Our environmental issues and our environment is far, especially out in our oceans there, far more important than the expenditures that could be incurred to ensure that they do not occur.
Just to make it clear, Dr. Adams' appointment was based, he was interviewed, there was an open advert for the position.
That's right.
No doubt when we came in, there was an acting CEO, environmental chief, there's an open advert. He won, of course, because by virtue of his qualifications and those things like that. And Dr. Adams has also indicated that he's been sent on 126 days leave, when in actual fact, he's only due for 77 days leave, which is included in this year, because I think he has 42 days leave per year, or 42. So he's sent on more leave than he's even entitled to. But I mean, obviously, we do hope that good sense will prevail. And
by the
Gordon,
way, look who they put in his place. Somebody that does not know anything about petroleum or anything about the environment to head the EPA now that he has gone on leave. This is trickery and chicanery. And that person there might now be instructed by Gil Teixeira or somebody from the office of the president to sign on the final investment decision. And because he is on leave. What nonsense is that? And this is the control freakism that will revert its ugly head back. You know, this one used to talk about unruly horse. We are having control freakism as the unruly horse coming back all over again here. Knock off the professional, bring in somebody that knows nothing on the issue and ask them to sign off. That can't work.
Gordon, you're up, news source.
Hi, Gordon Mosley, news source. Good afternoon, everyone. On the election petition case, Mr. Trotman, sir, we know we've completed the recount already for the 2020 elections. Do you believe by that recount being completed, the process for that petition and the length of time it may take will be shorter? Because we know it usually goes the other way around. The recount comes after the petition. Now, before, one other thing,
Okay.
Parliament set to open next week. I know there are concerns about COVID-19 and the arrangements there, but can you say whether the coalition has started to look at portfolios for shadow MPs, shadow ministers and so, and any decision on a deputy speaker?
Okay, let me deal with the easier one first, and that is the implications of the recount. So indeed, as you know, petitions normally involve going into boxes and doing a manual inspection, etc., a visual inspection and manual. But for the most part, the work has been done for us by the actual recount. And we have the actual observation reports. We have eyewitness reports of persons who were present. Even our own Jurita Fernandez was part of the tabulation process on a daily basis. And so with that said, it is expected that we would have covered most of the ground in terms of where the discrepancies and illegalities lie. And the question would then be for the court whether these are sufficient enough or overwhelming enough on both a quantitative and qualitative basis to overturn the election. So yes, insofar as the parliament is concerned, we have, of course, former ministers of government who will be going back to parliament. And so naturally, some of us will shadow our counterparts in government because we have the institutional memory and knowledge. And I dare say, though, that because there are many new members, some of us will also have to mentor other members and assist with other portfolios. At the appropriate time, the coalition will unveil that shadowing process. I wouldn't want to speak to it now, but as I said, some appointments will speak for themselves because of knowledge. I don't see David Patterson, for example, taking on culture when he's so well versed in infrastructure. And I dare say we'll have to answer to some of that. And Mrs. Hughes knows both tourism and she knows telecommunications. She's become an expert at both. And so some of that speaks itself. Insofar as the deputy speaker is concerned, no decisions have been made. As you know, in the last parliament, the PPP, by not recognizing the government, did not had very, very limited engagement and came to parliament to frustrate and to object and did not name a deputy speaker as such. And these are matters that we would have to determine and decide on in the days ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dennis? He's here?
Yes, I am here. Good afternoon, everyone. I would
Good
like to
afternoon.
know, sir, to what extent has the coalition calculated the political risks of having a petition done? And could you say what the AFC probably would have done had it found itself in a situation where one of its MPs, already gazetted and so on, had resigned from the party? What would you have expected that MP to do?
I didn't get to hear clear.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Rob.
The political risks for filing a petition, I think, Rafa, you could.
Well, as I said before, the world has seen the multitude of discrepancies from Region 1. Region 4 and Region 6 seem to be the epicenter of confusion, missing documentation, etc. So I think the risk is greater if there's no petition filed. And I think the risk is greater if attempts are made to subvert justice by preventing a speedy hearing or trying to ignore the obvious that these elections lack credibility. And let me say this, the very fact that you have Mr. Mingo arrested and assistants and what we witnessed at Liliendal, at Patterson and Liliendal during the recount, to me, it says that these elections lack credibility overall and in every region, and I want to put it out there. So the risks of accepting them as they are, these results, I think will affect our democracy for generations to come. And it's not just the Mingo issue that is looming before us. It is all that was discovered that people who were dead had voted and people who were living abroad had voted, and documents which should have been there to verify certificates of employment were missing, etc. So it's more than one thing. It's the combination of all of these, which I think go to the very heart of whether or not we had a credible election. So in our view, there's a greater risk for not filing. On the question of what a member should have done or what a party should have done if a member is no longer part of the party, I believe that for Mr. Ramjatan, who has very strong views on this, recall that in 2005, when we formed the AFC, this question came up. As a result, a bill was introduced into the parliament called known as the recall legislation. It is still there, and it's a matter of individual and political choice that would have to be made. But Mr. Ramjatan may wish to speak to that some more.
You try as best, Dennis, to expect your members to be in accordance with the party that would have ensured that they become parliamentarians, unless, of course, it has gotten so egregiously bad. And now with the recall legislation, it has made the task easier. We would hesitate very long and hard before we exercise rights under that. But if it comes to that, certainly it will be done. I believe, in view of what happened to us with the Charan Das issue, that, you know, although we had wanted not to utilize it, it might very well come to fruition if a member wants to go the way that Charan Das did, and so on. I know that that brought down a government, but we can have within opposition members, and I have known of the history of England and the history of Canada, where members too from the opposition side has jumped the aisle, as sometimes happen, and crossed the floor. Well, there again, we can then utilize that recall legislation. There are other methods that we can adopt, and we will think about them just prior to going in there. There are things like letters of resignation. When I was a member of the PBP, that is one of the things that they had asked me to sign on to, and so on. And then you use the letter of resignation. But these are things that you hope that as parliamentarians, they all appreciate that the collective and the collegiate is important, and that they do not do that, or they come and tell the leader or the leader of the list that, here, I can't carry on with this anymore. I would like to resign. And that is the honorable way of doing it.
Do you think Mr. Rabush Ali should resign at this stage, given the fact that she's no longer
That is, that is an internal matter with the WPA. I don't think we.
But she is on the coalition's list of candidates. It's not internal to the
Yes,
WPA.
but she is a part of the WPA, and they have like the AFC. We have our own mechanisms, and we're an individual constituent party, and we would obviously like to use. We would have the prerogative of using our mechanisms to address our internal issues. And I do think that the WPA has similar mechanisms, and they will address it that way.
My broader question, Mr. Patterson, is whether you think she should sit in the coalition benches in Parliament, having resigned
been extracted. I mean, one thing that we set up, there was when the Cummins-Berg Accord was put in place, we had a menus of measures, we had a core principles, and we had agreed as long as you satisfy these core principles that you are eligible to sit in Parliament. So the answer is yes, she is eligible to sit in Parliament. We are approaching Ms. Day. I think you're the last person. I think there's no other persons. You wanted to add a follow-up question? I think she's left.
Hi, yes, Mr. Patterson.
Yes, quickly. I think we're running up 9 minutes. Raphael has to leave in a minute.
Okay, my follow-up question was based on the SOP question. Now, you had said on March 14 that the coalition statements of poll had matched the numbers produced by Mr. Mingo. Now, some would find it rather daunting that the AFC is championing the coalition's many claim of electoral fraud, while it refuses to acknowledge that Mingo's numbers were fraudulent because this was proven. And in doing so, Mr. Patterson, you are refusing to be held accountable for the comment you made about the coalition statement of poll. And my next follow-up question is to Mr. Raphael Trotman, who said that they would be using the allegations of dead voters and migrant voters. But these allegations were debunked by our newspaper. The majority of the allegations were debunked. So can you say really what evidence will be used in the elections petition?
Right, first, let me answer that there. You know, I mean, I refrained from not even commenting that. I was asked by exactly Dennis Shrobral on Tinker. You said on what if our statements, the poll, and my response was mostly, if you can recall, but obviously as a journalist, you never bothered to.
I know, I saw mostly.
But mostly, so therefore, obviously, at that particular time, there were 8 statements of poll that I think Mr. Bruce Golden set out of the statement poll. So I said mostly, and that was it. And you are now saying that I'm not want to be held accountable, saying that mostly our statement poll was mostly in line with what was declared. So I don't see what I am to be held responsible for. If you check the interview, you're insinuating something else that wasn't correct. But I mean, obviously, that's your prerogative. And Mr. Trotman, on the question of debunking, I want, before Raphael says something, I also, before you talk about the dead people, I want to make a mention. The chief immigration officer of this country is the commissioner of police. You would have thought, even Kaichur News, you would have thought that if you, and I'm talking about persons that said they were here while the chief immigration officer said that they were not. From my knowledge, I'm not a lawyer, not a single soul has challenged that officially. Not a single soul has challenged that officially. Some persons has gone to the newspapers and said I was here and I voted and so forth. The chief immigration officer has said that on March the 2nd, he has confirmed these persons were not in the country and nor had they returned legally. I don't know, no one has officially challenged what he said, but the newspaper said they have persons said I'm here, I'm not. you would have thought for your immigration purposes that persons would have filed a claim, filed a report, something like that, to get the chief immigration officer to correct his records. They have not. They've just gone to Kaichur News and you have showed them pictures and you said, I don't know what proof you have, but the chief immigration officer, the repository of our immigration records, has confirmed a large amount of the numbers and names submitted, they were not here according to his records. We have to use, and obviously, and I would hope in a court of law, the chief immigration officer's records would stand paramount as opposed to someone who hasn't challenged his the veracity of his claim. So that's my response to that as well. You would have thought there would have been.
Indeed, David. That record is admissible in a court of law, and the PPP will have to bring those people to rebut that. They will have to bring the 4,800 names that the commissioner set up as the people not in Guyana at that time, whose names were ticked off in these various East Coast boxes or whatever it is, as being here in Guyana. So it's the PPP who will now have to say, but these people, and bring them to court. Because it's easy to go on with some of these newspapers that love to sensationalize and they say, well, this is the man, Kemraj Ramjatan, he was here, whatever. Well, bring him to court because we will then cross-examine him. How he came back. Did he go out to New York on that flight, on that date? Which flight brought him back after the COVID started here in Guyana, and all kinds of things. And then is when you're going to see what will happen in the court. There is where the truth test, the acid test takes place. And 4,800 names and a couple hundred of dead people and so on are lots. That could affect the seating arrangement alone. And then we got about 11,000 more where the boxes had no documents and all of that. That's important. And these are actual facts found by you, the reporters out there who are present at the scene and also the supervisors of the recount. Is that then a credible elections? And so I have absolute faith in the process. We are going to get some positives out of it. And it probably will be the second successful elections petition that would have been brought in this country.
Yes, Rafael.
I don't wish to add much except to say that I think both our General Secretary and leader have quite capably debunked Kaichur News' debunking. I did see a few persons paraded on the pages of Kaichur News, but I don't believe that they could add up to thousands or hundreds. And I believe it's a dangerous claim to state that Kaichur News single-handedly debunked this claim, when in fact the chairman of GCOM herself acknowledged receiving information from the police force and the general registrar's office, but went on to say that these were matters which had to be raised in a petition. So it was accepted at GCOM that there was, and that there were persons who ought not have voted, so who voted. And so I am amazed that Kaichur News is now saying that there's nothing there, when I am aware, and based on the chairman's own statements, that she felt that there were things there, but she was powerless. She said to investigate further, to take action, and that it should be left for a court. But nonetheless, I know that, as Kemraj says, newspapers are in the business of course, exposing and debunking and making money when they do. And this is why the acid test, as Kemraj says, is under cross-examination in a court when a person is under oath. I thank you for that. And I'm asking for permission to be allowed to leave. Thank you, everyone. Have a safe and enjoyable day and weekend. Thank you.
Thank you, Rafael. Thank you for coming. I think yes, Kathy, sorry, my apologies.
I wanted to make a comment. As a former journalist, I want to observe or remind everyone that on social media, we had several incidences of persons, especially persons overseas. I remember one gentleman, I'm sorry, I don't remember his name right now, but he was extremely angry that his mother, who had passed away, it had been alleged that Medas, yes, that she had actually voted. And so I want to say that there's a fair amount there was a lack of balance, if we're honest with ourselves. We paraded and we may have highlighted persons that said that they were in fact right here, but we did not give the similar kind of balance to the persons that actually could prove that they were not in Guyana. And a lot of those incidences exist and were documented and will be part of the elections petition also. I just wanted to make that observation. And I wanted to remind folks to the process by which, in the recount, it was actually a question that was raised around those tables that said to GCOM, do your records show that this particular number cast a ballot? And it was based on that we were then able to determine and to prove on the spot on a few occasions, because we had copies of that certificates. So the reality is that there are several cases and the election petition will settle that. Thank you.
Yes, and Ms. Day, thank you very much. And Kaito News, I hope you recall and record the persons who came to you that you've debunked it, because if their name is still on the as not voted, they'll be asked to go to and make, as Cameron said, to give representation and be cross-examined. That's why I think Mr. King, you had a question on CGIA, and can you quickly ask and then we can wrap up?
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. Since the new Minister of Public Works has taken up office, he has made some rather glaring criticisms of the management of the CGIA project.
Which are the glaring criticisms?
He talked about the quality of work done, and he said it was a disaster along those lines of criticisms. You have stewarded this project for the time you had been in office as minister. Would you say that you failed to steward the completion of the project properly? And could you explain why it wasn't completed when you were minister?
Thank you very much. Right, I just recall. He said that the project is troubled. I just Google it up. And he's absolutely right. It is a troubled project. It was a disaster in 2015, as you know. And I have in front of me, and I probably should share it, the report from the consultants in 2015, which would have been hired by the PPP. That was a consultant. The monthly report is dated May the 19th of 2015, which highlights all the poor decisions that would have been made by the previous administration, including one, the idea of having to go to extend the terminal on both sides. It's not a decision made by this government, my administration, or me. It was made by the previous administration. It's in a monthly report right in front of me on my screen at the moment. The consultants' report dated. It is,
I get any thing?
Pardon? Yes, it is dated the May the 19th, 2015, and the consultants is MMM in association with SEMCO, and all of these matters that they claim that were done for were under my administration were not there. So the decision to extend the runway on both sides, that was done by the previous minister, Roopson Ben. The decision to and the cost, and at that time in this report, and at that time the cost, what they decided they would increase the project cost to cover the increased cost, and between them and the consultants, between them and the contractor, they'll try and find a mechanism of sharing the additional costs. So they acknowledged, and the report is here, which shows that May 19th of 2015. So all of the decisions that were made before us. What we did and what I did.
Are you willing to share that report, Mr.
What
President?
I did, is you asked that question, allow me to answer, please. What I did was, what the government did at the time is set out that no more money will be paid. And I've said this extensively. The new minister keeps babbling on about 8 air bridges versus 4 and those things like that. As a government, we said no more money than was budgeted, that was projected, will be spent on a project. So if the previous administration made decisions that would have increased the cost of the project and were willing to expend additional sums on the project, and we said no. So therefore we had to, you have to review the project and ensure that it comes in within the monies that were allocated for it. And that is exactly what was done. But more importantly, there's no feasibility study for this project. So you should ask the minister, he's there now. I mean, he's great at dodging. Ask him, let him find a feasibility study. There's no tender for this project. Nobody tendered for this project. This project was awarded to the contractor. We don't know who. It didn't go to the National Procurement and Tender Board. I haven't seen a cabinet paper saying that this is what it do. There was no design. The contract was awarded, money's paid, and then the design was done. Secondly, the entire idea, I mean, let's be honest, the idea, what they decided to do is to build an airport, and they said that just because they put 8 air bridges. It's a poor decision, absolutely poor decision. And it's a poor decision as we speak today, because all the assumptions are, and all the indications are that the Tumeri International Airport will outlive the space that is required for it in a very short space in time. They never had any study to say, well, listen to me, you know, I mean, what we can do there. Around the areas, it is in a congested area. Everyone knows that if you go, that have traveled, that there's space for expansion and those things like that. But they made a decision to go there anyway. They tried to move the residents. You can't move people that have been there for 30 odd years to say that you want to expand the airport. Guyana is 83,000 square miles. They could have had a study to decide, like we would do, where was a better location if you want to spend 150 million US dollars. They never did that. So we took a project that was not, I mean, he said trouble, it was a disaster. It was a disaster at the time. They had no consultants and no on a job for 3 years. The contractor worked for an entire year without any supervision. And that is what we took on, and everyone can see the finishing project, the product there right now, you know what I mean? So when the Honorable Minister, when he speaks, you should take that against what you can actually see. And finally, he made a comment on the defects liability period for this project is 2 years. It's 2 years. So therefore, any defect that he finds between now and 2021, the end of 2021, the contractor has to fix it. So he is quite good if he sees a roll of toilet paper that's not there, he can tell them to change it. That's it, and that is the position in which we left the project. But right now, it's a functional, very functional runway, the longest, the second longest in the Caribbean behind Suriname. All commercial jets, rated commercial jets can land there and disperse there. And any other issue is addressable.
Mr. Barazu, could you say whether among your MPs, whether any is drawn from Berbice?
Pardon? Who's MPs?
The AFC side, any of your MPs?
No, we don't have any from the Berbice.
Why not?
We had a internal selection process, and the 9 MPs you see as a result of our internal selection process. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to, Kathy, you want to say?
I want to say that I think that we can also remind that Kemraj hails from that area, and persons may not know that every weekend he is visiting his mom up there. So I don't think we're totally in the dark. Just that quick observation. Thank you.
thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us. Thank you, Kamraj, Rafael, who's left, Kathy, Jarita. Thank you very much, folks, and do have a good evening. Bye.